Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Inside Politics here on KTN News. Thank you for staying with us. Now, on Friday, during the ouster motion of Kithure Kindiki as the Deputy Speaker in the Senate, the minority leader, the Siaya Senator James Orengo, did say that the Senate will be very crucial in the coming days, leaving Kenyans to debate what he actually meant. And this, of course, goes with the whipping and lining up of various political parties that has been ongoing. We have seen the Jubilee party trying to put its house in order. Uhuru Kenyatta in this crusade trying to get his business done. And of course, the other side of the Jubilee party seemingly losing in that. There has been what has been called the handshake coalition, also seemingly winning in this. We have seen a post-poll deal by the Independence Party KANU with Jubilee. Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka also did say that he had been given the go-ahead by his party to work out a deal with Jubilee Party. ODM is doing that, obviously, but hasn't signed anything that is formal. We were told that the Amani National Congress was going to join as well. That is yet to be seen. So we're asking, what is Parliament preparing for? Is it the impeachment of Deputy President William Ruto? Or is it a referendum bill to try and push it without any opposition inside the two houses of Parliament? Let me come to you, Mark Bichachi. What do you think about this?
Well, I think, number one, that the first thing that is critical for President Uhuru Kenyatta is, of course, delivering on his legacy. He is a president who finds himself between the devil and the deep blue sea. You've got COVID-19, which is a health disaster. You've got our financial status, which based on COVID-19 and our increased borrowing is not at the best of places. Then you've got his things that he wants to do. But one of the things that is critical that we must understand when it comes to the question of the numbers that he needs just to push down his agenda. Uhuru Kenyatta has been able to underwrite his numbers in parliament using the coalition of the handshake between him and Raila Odinga for quite some time. I think he's just now scaling up that particular agenda. And yes, he will need those numbers in order to push the PPI referendum bill. Whether an impeachment of Deputy President William Ruto is looming or not is actually a legal question. And by that, I mean, are they finally going to say, let us take criminal charges against the deputy president? Will they begin to discuss Weston and other properties within that particular case? Is it time, and will the country respond peacefully to that? Will Rift Valley remain amicable during that time? Those are really the questions. I don't think the impeachment of William Ruto is something that they are planning to do, because that would definitely make him an underdog that would have a lot of support from his base. And given the fact that he's also been very quiet concerning the purge, then I don't think that's going to happen. Further, I think there's also the lesson that you cannot buy senators for a long time. These MPs seem to be for rent, and immediately they are put on the spot, they will leave you dry. So do you really need to impeach him?
All right. Rosalind, do you agree?
I don't agree with him. And anyway, the president, remember after the 2017 elections, and just before that, people talked about President Uhuru being a lame duck president. And I think what is happening is just him trying to assert his authority and say, hey, I'm the head of state here. And because of that, he'll require the numbers both in the both houses. Just what Bichache has talked about, the budget, bringing in the issues of economic recovery, bringing in the issues, because even in terms of even changing the cabinet and all that, he will actually require Parliament to pass his candidates, anybody he seconds their name to Parliament. So I think for the president is first, do I have the footnote and the hold in Parliament? And that will start with the National Assembly, because National Assembly is where you can never know which way it goes, and that is the main house. And I think what he has done in the Senate is just to send a strong message to the National Assembly that nothing will block me from taking over and being the right foot in the National Assembly. I know the president has called for the PG of the National Assembly on June 2nd, And we have been told that by the time the House resumes on that day in the afternoon, we will be having new leaders, both the leadership in the House and maybe some crucial committees like the budget, which is the main committee that deals with the budget, that we will have changes in that. So I think what is happening is just for the president to ensure that his legacy agenda, that is the big four, is actually implemented or is on course by the time he leaves in 2022.
You don't think it has anything to do with the referendum bill?
It has also to do with the referendum bill. Remember, we saw already the bill proposed by the committee oversight the Constitution, that is a committee chaired by Jeremiah Kioni, has been published. There is also another bill on the way sponsored by JILAC, that is a Justice and Legal Affairs Committee chaired by Cheptumo. So we don't know if these two bills will be collapsed into one to come to Parliament. But again, remember, the BBI report is not yet out. The other day, Raila was talking about the BBI report being ready and they're just waiting for the corona issue to cool down. So here is a case where we have the BBI final report that we validated, that we are yet to see. We also have these bills proposed in Parliament. So again, it will come to a way whereby, because Raila said that the referendum process will be approached in three ways. There will be those that will be amended through a parliamentary process. There are those that will go to the people for amendments, those that are protected in the sections of the Constitution. And we also have those that are going to be amended through statutes. Those are regulations and the policies. So all this, I think, we'll see next month, because Rengo had talked about the country having a referendum in June. I don't know if we'll be able to achieve that timeline because of the COVID issue. But yes, a referendum is on the cards.
So the bill by Jeremiah Kioni's CIOC, Dismas, talks about a referendum being held at the same time as the general election in 2022. So the referendum is a debate, is a real current debate. Do you think that is why we are seeing all this whipping up inside Parliament by all political parties, really?
I doubt whether that's the main motivation. I think the motivation is from President Kenyatta, that is leaving office in the next 2.5 years, and nobody knows quite what his legacy is going to be. Because right now in Kenya for the last 7 years, there's no signature event or signature legislation or anything signature that you can remember President Kenyatta when he leaves office. For Kibaki, the specifics you may talk about infrastructure and improving governance. But for President Kenyatta, nobody seems to be quite sure. Because during the first time he was busy with ICC, he pretty much did nothing. Second time he began with the Big Four, and it seems right now Big Four is collapsing. Then there's now the question he keeps on asking himself. Right now where I'm seated, am I working on my legacy or am I planning on my successor? Am I going to engage in succession planning? And then the deputy president comes in. That right from the time they were sworn into office for the second term, William Samoei Ruto started campaigning for 2022. And in the process, they're not driving in the same direction. So it becomes very complicated for him to achieve his agenda. And if I was seated in his advisory room, I'd actually ask him to consider impeaching his deputy, because I suspect he may want to fire him, but he has no power to fire him. So the best option would be for him to marshal the numbers. He's got the political insurance from Raila Odinga, impeach him, then he's got a clean slate, at least to clean Kenya of corruption for the next 2 years.
So you're
That's something he can do.
saying he can't see anything, or you cannot see anything the president has done for 8 years. So what can he achieve in 2?
Well, you know, by the time Kibaki was leaving office, if you drove around Kenya, the countryside, you would see a road next to your village. People would talk about increased civil liberties. And, you know, there was a feel-good factor about him, you know, having his people work. And also, you know, during that time when they were working with Raila Odinga, there were so many things which people appreciate. But for President Kenyatta, if you're looking for anything, you have to go to some portal where you can identify things. If you're looking for these stadiums, we're being told that during the manifesto launch, you go to wherever they're supposed to be, you don't see a stadium. In my village, wherever there was supposed to be a stadium, there is 9. We just have the basic structure. So if he wants to leave a legacy, he's got 2.5 years where you can go home as the person who killed corruption in Kenya. Now, if you're not going to kill corruption, maybe because your cabinet or your deputy is not giving you the opportunity, for the cabinet you can fire, but for the deputy you cannot. So the best, in my view, strategy would be an impeachment, and he's got the numbers. And I'm not able to understand why Mark Bichachi is afraid that there may be, in Rift Valley, there may be issues. I mean, we are not in a banana republic. We've got our security agencies. And if this decision is in the public interest and in the national interest, I see no reason as to why the president shouldn't do it. And then the second level is, these political party leaders who are, stumbling all over, bedding all over to support President Kenyatta, we need to ask one primary question. That is this support anchored on Amina's needs, or Wanjiko's needs, or Nafula's needs, or do they keep on asking the question, what's in it for me? We need to look at these politicians and ask them this deep question. Are they going there, they're asking, what's in it for me as Wetangula? What's in it for me as Kalonzo? Or is going to be issue-based support? Because those are the critical questions. The politicians, they're going to take us around small circles. They may be going in because they want to be given favors, and at the end of the day, Amina is bleeding.
Cherotich, from where you sit, what is the reason for this jostling that we are seeing inside Parliament or inside or across the political parties to join Jubilee?
Well, Ben, for me, I take it straight back to succession politics. First of all, if they proceed to try and impeach the deputy president, I will consider Jubilee Kieleweke as being highly unstrategic because of the underdog phenomenon that would emerge. But I know, based on the trajectory since the handshake, and then the Building Bridges Task Force, and then the first report that was launched, and then this desire to clean it up, and I hear that the document is almost ready. The trajectory has always been taking us down the path of succession come 2022. And when people talk about President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy, I laugh, I smile, because ultimately there's no legacy he needs to be leaving, because he's going to continue to be present by proxy. And this is what succession politics ultimately is all about. But for that, he requires the numbers. And he has ODM, he has NASA. When you see Kina Kalonzo crossing over, I mean, Honorable Kalonzo's migratory patterns are extremely predictable, like those of a seasonal bird. And you will expect these alliances to form and reform and so on and so forth. So everything is driving us down this pathway where Wanjiko has nothing ultimately to benefit from, which is about succession politics. So if they decide to interfere and interrupt that trajectory with further impeachment activities, it'll almost be like flogging a dead horse. And as Kenyans, we need to ask ourselves how it is that we have ended up in a situation where there's a referendum that is likely going to be shoved down our throats, where the questions are not ours at all. I have asked this repeatedly. Which Wanjiko requested some of these things that we have seen coming up in the BBI report, and nobody has been able to give me an answer. So ultimately for me, this is about pushing us down into the referendum and making us think as Kenyans that we have two choices. We have either to support the Ruto camp, which of course many people think I do because they make ethnic stereotypes, or to support the Kieleweke camp, which if I did also would also be easy to get away with, because of course there seem to be Kalenjins on both sides of the divide. But ultimately, as Kenyans, we have been pushed into a place where we only have two choices. And I'm reminded of when Bill Clinton came up against George Bush and didn't seem to be making much headway until a third force appeared, and that was the late Ross Perot, who ended up disturbing and destabilizing the Republican vote. So I always wonder to myself when Kenyans will be ready to imagine the possibility of a third force potentially that would come and disrupt and provide alternatives and options. But ultimately, as Kenyans, we have been told you have two ways you can go. You can vote for the losing team, which is Tanga Tanga, and you can see they don't have the numbers, they're in the doldrums, they're going to be prosecuted, things are going to go bad for them, and if you're there, shauri yako, or you can be with the winning team that has said, pende msipende, there will be a referendum, we're going to alter the constitution to suit our purposes, and we are going to have a reinvigorated succession come 2022. And as for the president's lame duck space on the budget, this is the very last budget he's going to preside over. Come 2021, the budget, he won't be there for the completion of that particular budget. Maybe his proxy will. So we're looking at things that are very much in flux politically. And when I bring it down to the common denominator, which is Wanjiko, as we are here in the peanut gallery, watching and being told to vote this way or think this way or support that way, we are still not able to put food on our tables.
Speaking of which, Rosalind, the succession politics, everything seems surrounding based on Jubilee Party, whether you support the president and the handshake and the people coalescing around that, or you support the deputy president and Tanga and all that. How many horses do you think will be in 2022, if you could speak now?
Wow, I think it's still very challenging. I think we're still early to talk about whether it will be a 2-horse race, 3-horse race, or what. Because I've seen parties talking about coalitions and post-coalitions and signing of agreements with Jubilee. And if you look at the other day, we just tried to navigate on this, and we were told that even as parties talk about signing post-election pacts with Jubilee, you've seen KANU, yes, they've signed a deal with Jubilee. We've had people talking about ODM, Wiper, and ANC. And what the underlining factor that people are not being told is that if you look at the Constitution, Article 108, that talks about party leadership and coalitions, then it means that for ODM to enter into a deal with Jubilee, they will have to surrender the position of minority in parliament and cross over to the position of majority. I don't think ODM will want to go that way. The same, I saw Kalonzo talking about the NEC meeting and the deciding to now join Jubilee. The question is, have they decided to dissolve NASA, because they're partners of NASA, and they deposited a coalition pact with the political parties registrar. Okay. So the question is NASA first going to disintegrate? Then after that, will we see these other parties coming in? And I think Musalia is just waiting on the fence that if ODM and Wiper decide to now join Jubilee fully, then they will actually be the new opposition in Parliament. So again, there is also that dangle that do we go this way now, or do we go as we head to the election? And if you have heard some of the ODM leaders talking, and they've said, yes, we are in for the handshake, we are working together with the government, but we are not joining Jubilee. We are retaining our entities until the next election. And that is why I'm saying it is very tricky to talk now about the 2022 elections. If it will be Ruto, you might be even surprised if you find Ruto coming again to work with Raila and being another coalition that nobody expected. You might even find Ruto coming back and reconciling with Uhuru and forming again another party, or maybe by 2022 we'll not have Jubilee, but we'll have another coalition to go for elections.
That's true. 2 years is a long time in politics. Mark Bichacho, for 30 seconds only. 2022 is around the corner, and we'll be here challenging Kenyans to ask Jubilee Party or anybody that will be coalescing around that what the government has done for them as Kenyans. Now, when everybody is joining the government right now, who will be claiming to have, checked the government at that time?
Well, unfortunately for Tanga, that will have to be them. If you look at who are the sharpest critics today of anything the government does, it has to be Tanga, whether it's a fight against corruption or BBI. And therefore, already one of the things that is shaping up, and it might be a political genius on William Ruto's side, to totally separate himself from the legacy that is Uhuru Kenyatta. And that is something that I don't think he's going to shake off anytime soon, because it seems to be working for him to oppose a government within which he sits.
All right. Enough said. Let's take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we shall be stepping away from politics and talking about the coronavirus global pandemic. The latest bid or plan by the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, to try and cushion Kenyans. A 54 billion shilling economic stimulus plan set or aimed at jump-starting the economy. We'll talk about that next.